This is Death Valley, one of the hottest places on Earth also, one of the driest places on Earth also, one of the most beautiful places on Earth with sand dunes and salt flats and badlands and mountains and more. It's a place like no other, and it holds many secrets. But today we're going to talk about just one of those secrets that has baffled scientists for years. Over in the northwest corner of Death Valley, tucked away in an area called the Racetrack Playa, there are rocks that move. And by move, I don't mean they roll over the course of decades due to erosion or anything like that. No, these rocks pick up and move pretty much overnight. This is the so-called mystery of the moving stones of Death Valley. Death Valley itself isn't a mystery. It's located in eastern California and takes its name from the high amount of people who have died there. There are at least 23 known deaths there. Whether people got lost in the 5th or 6th century BC, stumbled into the wrong crevice and died of exhaustion, or were just plain murdered. The name stuck because most of the deaths occurred during the mid-1800s when Death Valley was used as an informal prison camp for miners who broke the law. These days, though, it's a popular tourist destination and part of the greater Mojave Desert ecosystem. And yet, despite being so well documented, there's still plenty that we don't know about this particular stretch of land. In the northwest corner, there's a weird, flat, salty area called the Racetrack Playa. Its name comes from the fact that in the early 1900s, some prospectors did race their cars around here. But aside from that, it's basically just been left alone since the government bought up all the mining claims in the early 1930s and turned it into Death Valley National Park. In the 1940s, that's when park rangers first started noticing something strange. There were rocks that would randomly appear in lines across the playa and then disappear again after a few days. It took another couple of decades for anyone to pay much attention to the situation, but eventually, in the 1970s, the media picked it up. By the end of the decade, the park had set up a little visitor center where they'd put all the information they'd gathered about the rocks. But the truth is, even after 50 years of investigation, they don't really have any answers. There are two things we do know. First, the rocks aren't moving on their own. There's no sentient AI colony of rocks trying to send a message to mankind. And second, the rocks aren't actually moving very far. They might look like they've traveled hundreds of yards across the desert, but in reality, they only move between 4 and 16 feet. As for how long they've been doing this, no one knows. We have photographs dating back to the 1930s that show rocks in exactly the same position they are in today. But that's not proof that they haven't moved for decades. For all we know, they could have started moving in the 1930s. What we do know is that the rocks don't move every day. They're not on some kind of internal clock. They seem to wait until the ground is saturated with water and the winds are just right, then move as quickly as a gust of wind can blow them. Some of the rocks are small pebbles, while others weigh as much as 66 pounds. And according to Death Valley officials, some have left deep grooves in the hardpan, which is the clay-like surface covering the playa. Over time, these mysterious rock movers have become a bit of a tourist attraction. Thousands of visitors head out to the Racetrack Playa each year hoping to catch a rock in motion. But like trying to spot Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, the longer you search, the less likely you are to see anything. So if the rocks move without any outside force and they're only moving a few feet, what's making them move? Over the years, several theories have come and gone. Some are weirder than others, like the idea that aliens are messing around with us. More practical ideas have involved water. One theory posits that the thin layer of water that sometimes covers the playa causes the rocks to float like boats on the water, then gets pushed along by the wind. Another theory suggests that the water could cause the clay beneath the rocks to liquefy, turning the rock into a makeshift skateboard. Maybe a combination of the two. Others believe the movement is caused by ice. After all, even though Death Valley is hot, daytime temperatures regularly topping 120 degrees Fahrenheit, it does get cold at night. Temperatures below freezing aren't uncommon, so maybe the rocks freeze at night, then expand during the day, causing them to be pushed forward. Or maybe the ice forms underneath the rocks, expanding and pushing them along. But perhaps the weirdest theory of all is that the rocks are moved by a living organism. Not something like a giant underground worm, but by a colony of microscopic algae. Algae can move in response to light, a process called phototaxis, and they secrete a slime that can help them move rocks many times larger than themselves. Experiments have shown that under the right conditions, algae colonies can move rocks weighing as much as 6 pounds. Just imagine a bunch of tiny algae getting together and agreeing that it would be cool to push a certain rock 5 feet to the north. Then through sheer willpower, they make it happen. It sounds crazy, but researchers at the University of California, Berkeley think it might explain the movements of the rocks in Death Valley. To test their theory, they placed a bunch of rocks on a pan of algae and exposed them to ultraviolet light, simulating the intense sunlight of Death Valley. And sure enough, within 3 hours, they saw the rocks start moving. According to Richard Bryant, professor of integrative biology at Cal and leader of the research team, their results provide strong evidence that colonies of microorganisms living in Death Valley's hypersaline lakes are collectively shifting stones, and that this movement is driven by blue-green algae. Ultimately, it's still too early to say what's behind the moving stones. But if the algae hypothesis checks out, then that would be one heck of a scientific first. Never before has anyone discovered evidence that microbes can move rocks. Of course, if you don't buy it, then that just means the mystery will continue. People will keep heading out to Death Valley, hoping to witness rocks moving across the desert, all because no one knows what's going on in that barren wasteland. If you want to visit Death Valley for yourself, you'll find it in eastern California near the Nevada border, a little over 3 hours northeast of Las Vegas. The easiest way to get there is to drive. And once you arrive, you can explore everything this national park has to offer, including the weird rock formations of Badwater Basin, the massive dunes of the Mesquite Flat Sand Dunes, and more. Just don't go off the beaten path. Death Valley is a harsh environment, and flash floods can occur even in the middle of the desert. Also, always carry plenty of water with you, and let someone know your plans before you head out. Finally, watch your step. Aside from the usual wildlife, Death Valley is home to the wandering superbloom. If you're lucky enough to visit when it's happening, you might stumble across vast fields of wildflowers that blanket the normally barren landscape. Just make sure you don't accidentally step on one. Now, if you're into weird mysteries, check out our video on the strangest animals ever found in the Amazon rainforest. Or click this other link for a video you might also like.